West Virginia, WTRF proudly presents Ohio Valley Tonite with Nathan Marshall. Tonight's guest, Dr. Edith Eva Eger. Welcome to a very special edition of Ohio Valley Tonite with Nathan Marshall. And tonight we're joined by Dr. Edith Eva Eger. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
So good to be here.
And Dr. Eger is a survivor of the Holocaust. And amongst other things, she's also a clinical psychologist. Mm-hmm. She's a public lecturer. Mm-hmm. And she marched with Martin Luther King Jr. She is quite a woman, that is for sure. And she's from San Diego, California, but she's originally from Hungary. Mm-hmm. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is you were in Auschwitz. For our viewers at home, you were in the worst concentration camp, which is
a death camp.
Yes, quite a thing. How exactly did you end up at Auschwitz? Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Well, Hungary was taken over by Germany March 1944. Mm-hmm. We were taken very quickly into a brick factory, and from there I was on the cattle car, May 1944. Yeah. It's documented at the Red Cross, so I know that I arrived in Auschwitz May 22nd, 1944. Mm-hmm. I never forget the day when I met the angel of death called Dr. Mengele. Mm-hmm. He experimented with twins. Yes. He ended up in Paraguay, and he died there. And we didn't know what's going to happen. It was chaos, and people asked me, how did you feel? I said, I was void of feelings. I was numb. Yeah. I was just shaking, never knowing what's going to happen. Well, it turned out that my parents and my family died in a gas chamber, and my sister and I were chosen to work, and I got out of Auschwitz December 1944. Mm-hmm. I became a slave laborer and worked in factories carrying ammunition on the top of a train. Ended up in Austria, called Mauthausen, and from there I survived what is referred today the Death March. Mm-hmm. And I was liberated by the 71st Infantry. The Saints came marching in Gunskirchen, Austria. What is wonderful about that today I am known to do a lot of work with the military on post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was invited to go to Fort Carson, Colorado, and it's the home of the 71st Infantry.
That's irony at the finest.
Isn't it amazing how things come around? Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people I've heard a lot of people question, did the German people or the people around Germany, did they know what was happening? And from your recollection, did people know what was happening at the concentration camps and even with your family itself? What happened there?
Well, I went back to Germany to lecture for the Americans. And I remember I was in a first class train going to Berchtesgaden, and there were 3 elderly German people there across from me, and I was thinking, would you believe that I may have been on the top of this very train carrying ammunition for the Nazis? You know, one of the most well-used defense mechanism is denial. Yeah. I have yet to meet anyone who knew, even near Krakow, even because I went back to Auschwitz interviewing people, the smell from the gas chamber. And this is what you find. Yeah. And that's why I am so active as much as I can, because I owe it to my parents.
And denial and fear seems to what have drove that whole thing, I think.
And how could this happen?
Yeah.
Well, You have to think of a lie. It's got to be a big one. Then you repeat it, and people believe it. It causes mass hysteria. Yeah. Germany didn't win World War I, and the economic situation was bad. The German people didn't get their pension, so the whole scapegoat theory began. The book on that might be very good to read. Mm-hmm. It's called Capitalism and the Protestant Ethics by Max Weber.
Okay.
And he referred to the Jewish people as a pariah. And I think this is how it is. You don't kill people, you kill gooks and kikes. You give them a name and then they become subhuman. Yeah. And that gives you the entitlement. The Jews are cancer to society. Yeah. And that creates the mass hysteria. Well, they let a little Jew out like Einstein. Yeah. Came to America.
That was a bad mistake, yeah.
Helped America to win the war. But hatred breeds hatred, and violence breeds violence. Yeah. And I'm doing everything in my power to see to it that we empower each other with our differences. Yeah. That I can be I and you can be you. But together we're going to be much stronger than me alone or you alone.
And for the audience at home who doesn't know, you are 85 now, and you said you're not ashamed of that, so I don't feel bad saying it on air.
No, I am 85 young.
Yes, 85 years young, which is so true for you, for sure.
And I don't have time to hate, because if I would hate today, I would still be a prisoner. Yeah. And I have a revenge and vengeance to have a good life, to go dancing and enjoy every moment in life. Yes. That's my vengeance.
And you are doing it, which is...
I'm doing it. Every moment is precious. I just came from a lovely restaurant that you have here, and I never leave any food on my plate. To throw out a piece of bread is painful to me.
Yeah. Well, there's a good reason.
I eat up people's leftovers, and it has nothing to do with money.
Yeah. Yeah, you appreciate food when you don't have it. That's what my dad's always said.
I am telling you.
But during your reception at Auschwitz, when you arrived at Auschwitz, I want to talk about that a little bit. You said your father was separated from you, and he was led
away
to the men's chamber, and he was executed there. And then your mother was sadly the same thing. She was led later to the gas chambers.
Actually, Dr. Mengele pointed my mom to the left, and I followed my mom, and he grabbed me, looked me in the eye, and he said, "You're going to see your mother very soon. She's just going to take a shower." And threw me on the other side, which meant life. Isn't that absurd? The very man who annihilates my family. And I had tremendous survivor's guilt and shame. And finally, I revisited Auschwitz because I lost my family, and I never went to a funeral. And that's the work I do today. I guide people to revisit the places where they've been, to stop running as I did for 40 years. And I feel that it's much better when we face our fears rather than running from it or fighting it.
Can you elaborate on what that was like for, you were already 16 years old when that happened to you.
Yes.
What was that like for a 16-year-old girl who had never, nothing like this had ever happened to, of course, you?
Well, I had a boyfriend. And the boyfriend, it wasn't like today, Yeah. We had our own book club. We read the interpretation of dreams by Freud. I was very erudite, just like Anna Frank. People call me the Anne Frank, who didn't die. So when I was in the cattle car, he somehow found me through the cracks, and he said, "I'll never forget your eyes and your hands." And in Auschwitz, I said to myself, if I survive today, then tomorrow I'm going to see Eric, and I'm going to show him my hands and my eyes, that I never, ever even entertained the thought that I'm not going to get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, a goal.
So how do you find hope in hopelessness?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was 16, I was a romantic. I believed in love, that we're going to meet again, and someday we're going to get married. And I'm here talking to you.
Yeah. Do you know what happened to Eric?
He was shot a day before liberation.
Oh my goodness.
Brilliant, brilliant. What a waste.
I'm so sorry. That's terrible.
Me too. When my grandchildren ask me about what happened to this one, and my grandson asked me, did you go steady? You know, he was just 12 years old. And so I started to talk about Eric, and he finished the sentence right away. He died, didn't he? Because anything I start, they died, they died, and died. And so today I am so happy to be a great grandma.
Yeah.
That's a good revenge to Hitler.
That's a very good one.
Very good.
Very good one. Well, you talked about it earlier, but your mother whispered to you at one point, no one can take from you what you put in your mind, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful quote.
Isn't it? That's what I tell young people. Please don't make salad out of your brain.
Well, you said these words are so important to your survival. How did these words help you get through such a terrible time in history?
I created a world in myself because I was told every day not to even dream of getting out of here alive, that I'm subhuman and they're going to use me and then I'm going to die. What I learned there, that they could beat me up, they did, torture me, but they could never murder my spirit.
Yeah.
And I think I created that inner strength within me, resilience, perseverance, that this is temporary and I can survive it. And thank God I did.
Yeah.
I did.
You're
You're
one of the strongest women I've ever met. I mean, to look at you, people would say, "Oh, you know, would you do this definition of strong?" You are the strongest woman I've met.
I am. I tell women nowadays that you're not a strong woman; you're a woman of strength, and that comes from inside.
Dr. Eger, if you don't mind, let's talk about Dr. Mengele a little bit. The angel of death, as he was known.
He was no angel.
Yes, that is for sure. He was an evil, evil man. And he ushered your mother, sadly, to her death. And on that same day, he came around, and he was a lover of arts, I guess, and he found out you're a ballerina.
Well, my reputation was in a city that, yes, I welcomed the president, and I was known in the community as the dancer, and so they volunteered me.
Yeah, and you did it earlier. You actually still lift your leg on the side of your head.
I didn't know who he was. I didn't know either.
Yeah.
I was just told that he's the one who if they call it the finger game.
Yeah.
You know, left meant the gas chamber and the right meant that you were going to be
But you still have a little bit of dancing in you still to this day,
Oh,
right?
I do the high kick, but I had the flu, and somehow my left leg
it's still remarkable.
Not as good.
It's still remarkable
but
you can do it.
I usually still do the high kick, and I have to come back and do it. But yeah.
Well, I want to read a passage I found. A thing wrote about you, which is called "Hope Amidst the Ashes of the Holocaust," and I want to read a passage from that, and I would like to know how hard it was to dance and perform in front of Dr. Mengele, and what got you through this dance, because in this passage it was so touching, and I read it. It said, "A few hours after Dr. Mengele sent me to the right, the finger game as you called it, he summoned me to dance for him. From my stage I could see the smokestacks of the gas chamber. My mother's liberated soul was somewhere in the black soot ascending into heaven. I closed my eyes and remembered her words. No one can take from you what you've put in your mind." And I think knowing how much I love my mother, and I'm sure you do too, it's so touching to think about and how hard that had to be. What got you through that dance? You said disassociation earlier. What got you through this dance?
I think that spirit. I think also that I got through because there are many, many reasons probably. But today I can tell you that I miss my mom.
Yeah.
And we don't grieve over what happened, but what didn't happen.
Yeah.
When my granddaughter was born, Lindsey, the pediatrician examined her and she said, this little girl is very flexible. She might become a ballerina. And I said, great, now I have 3 generations. Now I can die because she lives. Well, she did become ballerina.
Yeah.
She went to a wonderful school in La Jolla called Bishop's. And she asked me to go and buy her a dress to go to her dance. And I come home, and all of a sudden I'm crying. And I'm thinking, what am I crying about? I just bought Lindsey a beautiful dress. I couldn't understand. The word understand is very academic.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I'm not crying because Lindsey went to a dance. I cried because I never went to a dance. And I think many of us suffered from unresolved grief. And that's where I tap in and take your hand and will go through whatever you experienced, you made it thus far. Yeah. So the question was not me or why me, it's what now? What now? What now that I can do now in my powers to live in a present, because I can only touch you now. Yeah.
What would you say to you didn't get to say goodbyes to your mother and father, and I know this is tough, but I think about people watching this 50 years from now or something like that. If you could say something to your mother or father or maybe do something differently, what would you, looking back, what would you say to them?
I would say to them that I am the luckiest girl, and I have those genes, the genes that survived, the desert, the Holocaust, that there is that survivor's personality that I have, that I gave to my children and grandchildren. And I would tell them that I miss them so. Yeah. And I will tell my story as long as I live. Yeah. I owe it to them. Yeah. That's the most beautiful gift of God, is the gift of memory. And I consider it really a tremendous joy to be here in this side of the country, to talking to you. You are a beautiful, young, wonderful, sensitive interviewer.
Thank you.
Best, one of the best I've ever been to. And I feel very honored.
Thank you. I feel very much honored.
I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.